Welcome back to the PR podcast Edge. My name's Mark. I'm the co-founder of the podcast studio Glasgow.
I'm Lindsay, a PR consultant with Lindsay Reid PR.
Right, Lindsay, podcast format is something that I think a lot of new podcasters don't give. I'm saying I know for a fact that a lot of new podcasters don't give this proper consideration, because we see it in the studio. Somebody starts a podcast, they think they're going to handle it one way, it's going to be a panel type discussion, and then after a few episodes they're like, oh, I've kind of run out of steam with that. I want to change the format. So we're going to talk about two types of podcast format: solo, which is just you on your own talking into a mic, maybe with a camera, or the guest format, and how do we choose which is best?
It's a difficult one, and it's not to say you can't switch between the two. I think a few considerations are what you want to get across in the podcast. So sometimes if you very much want to share your knowledge and walk people through a framework or, you know, a set of information that you know, a solo episode can be really, really good, because it means that you can plan it out over a series, say, and you get to deliver that information exactly as you think it needs to be delivered. The other thing to consider, I guess, is how much time you've got to pull these episodes together, because when you do have a guest, there's other considerations. You've got to work around somebody else's diary for a start. And when you're just yourself, you've got full control. You can fit in 3 podcasts in a morning, and then do, you know, a couple of weeks later, another 3, and basically work around your own schedule. But I think for me, it would more be around, what do I want people to take from this podcast, and how is it best delivered? How will I get the best results for those people listening? Is it by having a guest, or is it literally just by talking through everything that I've learned, everything that I know in my own experience?
It's good points. I would add another consideration to that, and it's what is going to be the format that I'll get some longevity from.
Yeah.
You know, it's really easy to start all enthusiastic, guest-driven podcast, and most of our clients, it's guests. So you've got a host or a couple of hosts and a guest, and they start enthusiastically doing it. But then maybe after, 8 to 10 episodes, the guests have dried up, and you've got the challenge of, do I let the podcast become inconsistent? Yep. So our publishing schedule's off whack, or do you just disappear for 6 months? Or do you factor in from the start, right, okay, the guest model is the one that works for the subject matter for our podcast, but we will intersperse, what one client, what did they call them, cookie-sized or bite-sized episodes?
Yes.
Where it's just solo content. Yeah,
that's quite a good approach, actually. I do know that there's some podcasts that I used to pitch clients to, and I've gone back recently to check if they're still, up and running and everything, and there's no evidence of guest episodes. So it's almost like it became too much of an effort to have guests on, and they switched to just having, solo episodes, because it is a bit of work to have a guest on. Like you say, consistency is really important. We've talked about this in previous episodes. It's really helpful for your audience to know when your next episode is coming out. So whether that's weekly, fortnightly, monthly, you need to be able to hit a consistent schedule to grow your podcast over time. And if you're going to have guests on, that does take a bit of prior planning, having a bit of a bank of recorded episodes that you can just keep getting out on that timescale, thinking of new guests, approaching them, planning it all in. And obviously, as your podcast grows, hopefully people will start to pitch you as well. But if you're going to go into it and have guests on, you really have to be prepared to, for all the factors involved.
And I think, let's think about it from a business point of view. Businesses that want to start a podcast, what is the goal of the podcast? Is it to build credibility? Is it to build a voice of authority? Is it to showcase expertise? My argument would be the guest model isn't going to do that, because it's focused on the guest. Now, if the guests happen to be people that work with you in your business, if the guests happen to be clients that either are or have worked with you, and it's case study driven, right, okay, there's an argument for the guest model supporting your goal of trying to build credible authority in your particular field. But if that's what you want to do, the solo model's the way to do it. And as you said earlier on, you sit down, record 3 episodes over the course of an hour. You don't need to worry about bringing a guest in, researching them, being a good interviewer, because that's a skill in itself that you need to learn. It's just you talking, whether it's into a mic or with a camera. So my argument would be the solo model is the model to go for if the podcast is purely to share knowledge and expertise with the view of building your credibility, your authority, and hopefully attracting new business.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. And alongside that, you can be guesting on other people's podcasts.
100%.
And then you're still making those connections. The only thing I would say is there is a bit of an argument for using your business podcast to connect with other businesses, maybe potential clients, partners that you might want to work with in the future. And actually a good way to actually even get on their radar is to invite them to be a guest on your podcast.
No, absolutely. So it's that hybrid model, I think, and I think it's overlooked, the hybrid model, where essentially the podcast is a vehicle for you and your business's expertise. Let's just frame it as that. But bringing the guests on from time to time, is absolutely ideal. The trick is to be consistent.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do the hybrid model, right, what does that look like? Is it 2 or 3 solos, 1 guest, and you repeat that cycle? But getting guests on, and you'll have seen this in your job, booking your clients as guests, you'll have seen, I'm sure, a raft of different ways that the podcast host handles the guest booking. What have you noticed?
Diaries are a real troublesome point at times. There's the intention there, but if you've got busy people trying to all connect at the same time, it's not always that easy. But I also think you have to think about the format of, do you want in person? Because again, that is actually more time, more effort, more things to book and sort out, but actually delivers a really, really high quality production usually. If you get a good studio, or you can do remote, which actually sometimes means that you can get better guests who are available only remote, but you think they'll be a really good fit for your podcast, but you wouldn't get that in-person, face-to-face experience with them. Again, if you're making that decision, usually I would pick one or the other, just for consistency. It's not to say it doesn't work doing a bit of each, but most podcasts that I know either do all remote or all in person. And I think there's a reason for that. Yeah.
Okay, so I would counter that slightly. Again, I think the hybrid model can work, but it comes down to the quality of the production on the host. So I feel an audience is more forgiving if, let's say out of 10 guest episodes, 8 are in person. The 2 that are remote, if the host is still in a professional, well lit, great sounding environment, the audience is a wee bit more forgiving. There's tools available as well. So Riverside, that's our choice for, as it creates a virtual studio. And the way it captures the audio in particular gives the production side of things a lot more leeway when it comes to cleaning up the audio of the guest. But yeah, I think across the board that, looking at the hybrid model, solo episodes interspersed with guest ones, in person, absolutely, if you can get it, if you can do it.
Ideally.
But there could be, we had a client that wanted to have a guest who is perfect for their audience, but the guest is in America. So there was no option other than, he's not going to pay to fly the guy out, and that's prohibitive. But I'm sure the audience will be forgiven when that episode comes out, because the quality of the conversation was absolutely brilliant.
Exactly. And you're delivering the content that's right up their street. And however they receive it, they actually don't mind too much, as long as, like you say, the quality is there. So yeah, I definitely agree. If you need to make an exception to the rule or sometimes deviate from your original sort of plan for the perfect guest that just can't do in person, then absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually know podcast hosts who've done almost all remote, but they've had a dream guest and they've gone and done the studio and done the in-person thing for the dream guest.
Yeah.
So again, it's using your gut feeling on what works best for your audience.
So I think we could close this by saying that, you know, launching a business podcast is one of the key considerations is the format that you're going to use. And I would always say have longevity at the heart of that decision. What do you see yourself doing when it comes to your podcast in 6 months, a year, 5 years' time? And the hybrid model, I would again suggest, is one that definitely should be looked at.
Absolutely. Think it through from the very beginning. Don't start until you've got a good plan of what you're going to record, when you're going to record it, who with, and then you're good to go.
Yep. Okay, thanks for listening and watching. We'll be back with you again next month with another episode of the PR Podcast Edge.